A huge commercial success, the 1993 comedy Mrs. Doubtfire made over $400 million. I'm still amazed by that. I'm pretty sure that's like without counting inflation either. That's $400 million without inflation, I think. That's insane.
It's based on a novel by Anne Fine.
Based on a novel by Anne Fine. The film was directed by Chris Columbus of Home Alone fame.
Oh, Christopher Columbus!
I hate Home Alone with passion. I think that is honestly the worst thing ever made.
And stars Robin Williams.
Yeah, and stars Robin Williams. The film was placed 67 on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Laughs list, which is hilarious because apparently that makes it 40 times better than Good Morning Vietnam. It's supposedly like, what would it be, 33 films funnier than Good Morning Vietnam?
I think it would be, and Bravo placed it at 40.
Yeah, Bravo placed it at 40. Bravo placed it at 40 on his list of 100 funniest comedies. Critical reaction was mixed, with Metacritic reporting the film had an average rating of 53 out of 100. At the 66 Academy Awards, the film took home the most important Oscar out of them all, the Best Makeup win.
That might be...
Which is deserved, too, if you think about it.
That might be your best joke in all these years so far. That's awesome.
Best Makeup. Which, it's funny because that's actually deserved. That's easily the only thing I like about Miss Doubtfire is the makeup.
This is an interesting movie, if you think about it. Because there's so much that's just wrong about it. I mean,
kind of just shitty. Like, if you think about it.
We're just saying this
moral ramifications aside. But this movie is not a good piece of filmmaking. The editing is weirdly incoherent. Like, the cinematography is shitty. The jokes aren't really funny. It plays like an episode of SpongeBob.
And you're playing like an episode of Butthurt. I
am Butthurt. I wanted to do Jumanji, which I still don't think is good, but at least it's interesting. Like,
no,
this movie is like a commercial cash-in, though. And it's like a funny thing that we did talk about this one because
actually no. I mean, if you think about it, this film is a risk. Well, why? Our parents?
Think about...
If you're making a film that's targeted towards making money off a family, do you write it about a character who circumvents the law by cross-dressing to spend time with his kids and then ultimately gets dragged back to the court of law? Is that the way that you target families? No.
But here's...
If anything, families aren't going to families can be a little uncomfortable with their kids seeing that. I mean, if you're going for sheer dollar cash in, you go safe. You go with Lego Movie 18.
Here's what makes this movie safe, though. And you don't know who Matthew Price is, but he's a friend of mine from Toronto, and he does a podcast called Mammo, and he frequently brings up Mrs. Doubtfire as the example that he likes to use of studios. Like, sitting in a back room, smoking cigars, saying, well, this will make us a ton of cash. Because he says, because the way he points it out is, if you think about 1993, Robin Williams had just made Aladdin.
Yeah.
He was a huge star. The reason this movie made money was because it was Robin Williams, not because it's a safe film.
You could have made it anything then. You could have made it Aladdin 3, the movie starring Genie.
Aladdin,
and
the Genie version.
Arguably make more money based on how popular that role was. But I'm not going to lie, this movie is formulaic. But if you're going at the sheer for value, this film is a bit of a risk.
I don't think so.
It's a risk for Williams as well.
No, I don't think it's a risk. I think it's a risk because you see that as a risk. No. This is something that you do, and you see kind of the negativity in every storyline. The average movie-going audience does not see that he's actually a criminal. They see him as this funny man in a dress. They don't see, criminal. That's legally breaking the law to see his children. If you think about it that way, yeah, it's kind of dark, but the rest of everybody else, like the mainstream audience, sees it as guy in a dress, funny man in a dress, funny jokes in a dress. They don't see it as...
Some people do. I think that's grossly undersimplifying people. But
But
again, I mean, if I wanted to make money, I'm like, what are our biggest franchises right now? What are people just swallowing whatever the crap we throw in theaters and put a number at the end? How about Aladdin 4, Genie's Adventure? I mean, I would go pay to see that. I'm being a bit of an idiot because I'm identifying as a cash grab, but I would go see it. It's not like Disney's anything against making sequels, guys.
No, and I get that. I get that. I just don't.
There are bigger ways to solely make money. There are bigger ways to capitalize. So, for example, I mean, you could make Aladdin 4, the Adventures of Genie. You could make, I don't know if, hell, I mean, Happy Gilmore came out around about that time, right?
Price is Wrong, bitch.
They're starting to play with the idea of this not quite right protagonist. But in that case, you could have done like a Happy Gilmore meets Robin Williams crossover. Like, there are safer ways to make money.
Please tell me that they would do Happy Gilmore versus Mrs. Doubtfire. I would go see that in a heartbeat. And
I'm not saying that there wasn't part of this being a cash-in, because I've just identified that Happy Gilmore was out around that time. I don't know the exact
Happy Gilmore, I think, is 77, so it's about 4 years later.
4 years later? Okay, so it's not quite out yet. But still, I mean, most people are going to have a bit of trouble identifying with a cross-dresser. Robin Williams makes it work. He does. Actually, you know what? Robin Williams makes this entire movie work.
I don't think the movie works per se,
but he makes it close to work.
I think Robin Williams,
watching it enjoyable. If you put someone like Robert De Niro in this role,
oh my God, that would be so awesome.
That would be a very different movie.
That would not play well at all with everyone else, but I would love that without a doubt. Especially if it was directed by Shane Black, I would be like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever."
Yeah, you could have taken this movie and made it from a comedy poking at darker elements to a horror movie, essentially, if you wanted to.
Oh, you totally could have. And the cash-in part of this is the tone. And
the funny thing is, I don't think you'd have to change anything, just the actor. So if you really think about it.
And the tone. I mean,
well, no, because
you change the score, change the way to be honest, the scenes are presented.
A lot of the tone.
I mean,
you could make differences in lighting and things like that.
Think about this though. So many of those scenes.
You don't have to rewrite it. You could rewrite everything.
You could. Well, what would work is if you cut out the scenes.
But you have to.
What would work is if you cut out all the scenes where he's trying not to get noticed as the creepy cross-dressing dude.
But wouldn't that be like, even if you left in the slapstick comedy, if you had someone like Robert De Niro and he wasn't like really trying to pull it off as slapstick comedy, you could just make him look really unstable.
Kind of. I think you would have to cut out the scenes and like, especially that scene, the first 30 minutes where like the woman is like the court lady is kind of just inspecting his house and he drops his face out the window and he's just running around trying to get dressed. If you cut that out of the film, you could, and he kind of just like kills her. Like he kind of
doesn't even have to kill her.
He just kind of stalks her in the house, like Robin. If you had De Niro in that role,
you know what? Actually, no. I want to see. Okay, if by some miracle, the people out there who make the alternate movie video trailers, for example, the one that cast the zombie movie made a zombie movie.
Wait, is that the one?
West Side Story.
Is it the one? Yeah, is it the one that they did the Up, Michael Bay's Up?
Maybe.
That is the fun. I'll have to show you that later.
You guys take Mrs. Doubtfire and rewrite it into a horror, because I don't think it would take that much.
I think it would take a lot. I think it'd be kind of a stretch because of the tone.
So that's our challenge to you, audience. Find someone out there who does this, because I totally want to see that. It'd be awesome.
Because of who Chris Columbus is, I think it would be very hard. Chris Columbus is somebody that wants to take everything, like even if it's dark, and make it super lighthearted. Like Home Alone is a movie that should be incredibly darker than it actually is, but that movie is a stupid romp. Like
it's a stupid romp.
Yeah, it really is. And
for the most part,
The Goonies is kind of the same way, and the first two Harry Potter movies are the same way. Like,
you know what's funny? This movie and the movie where Adam Sandler tries to take on being a parent actually have a lot in common. Except I'd argue that this is a better movie.
Wait, is that Just Go With It? Are you talking about that?
Not that one. But the one where he ends up taking over a kid. And then at the very end, he finds out it's like someone else's kid, and he has to return it.
What happened to Adam Sandler? Like, really? Like, let's be honest.
He started making really shitty movies.
Yeah, he did. He cashed in. Didn't he? Like, if you think about his career, he did some weird shit like Little Nicky, and like The Water Boy, and all these kind of weird, more edgy things, and then he fell into like this caricature of himself. I don't know.
His character became almost mean-spirited.
And no, his character was mean-spirited. His character became
his character
a lazy mean-spirited.
His character was a bit of a punk initially.
Yeah.
But he was always kind of that misunderstood punk who he has some rough edges. He loses his temper.
He was kind of a jerk, but
he's kind of harmless.
Yeah, and then he's
not out there to screw up people's lives.
And then he became,
and that's kind of warped.
And then he kind of became what would happen if your punk rock band got old and had a potbelly. Like that's kind of what happened. Like your punk rock band became old and less angry and is now just kind of sleepy.
now.
That's really what happened to Adam Sandler.
But what I was trying to say is, this movie works. It's a very odd movie. I don't think it's a movie you'll watch very often. But the biggest reason it works is almost solely because of Robin Williams.
No, and I will agree.
He basically takes over this movie, and it's like the director doesn't really know what he's doing, but I'm going to make this work.
And I will agree with you on that. In that, I don't think the movie works, but Williams almost makes it half okay.
He puts in a horrific, Herculean effort. I can make words.
The 7 trials of Robin Williams, Mrs. Doubtfire, and toys.
There's so many ways this movie could have gone horribly, horribly wrong.
It's so, and it does it in the way that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
Right? Like you would expect it to just kind of get really dark and
perverted and creepy.
Yeah, and detaching. But instead it just kind of, where I think it loses itself is it doesn't actually try it doesn't even get close to that edge. It kind of just stays as far away from that as he possibly can.
I feel without like actually, it needs to talk about that a bit more, but it doesn't want to go too far over that edge either. I mean, I don't remember what the ending is, but I think he gets off really
He does, because nothing happens to him.
Well, yeah, it's always fairy tale endings. So I remember the law gets involved in like...
Yeah, it's a fairy tale ending.
We totally believe your Robin Williams speech and light sentence, or you can see them on Sundays or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. He actually gets his way, which is kind of bizarre. I mean,
advice to you out there: don't try this.
Man, I wish this movie was not made by Chris Columbus. I wish it was made by Barry Levinson. Like, to be honest.
But then, would it have been a movie that should star Robin Williams?
Yes.
I mean, true, he does have the acting range.
Yeah,
but I think that would have audience whiplashed a lot of people, too.
I think that would have been a better movie, though. Even if it had audience whiplashed a lot of people, the tonal shifts I would have felt would have kind of achieved more, as he kind of... You could make it then like a descent into madness kind of film.
Yeah, which could have been interesting.
Which would have been a hell of a lot more interesting than Mrs. Doubtfire ended up being.
I enjoyed the movie when I watched it. I was a lot younger when I watched it. But, like I say, you're predominantly watching Robin Williams make the movie.
Oh, yes, you are. And without him, I don't know if the same director, different actor...
Wouldn't have worked. I'm going to go on a limb and say it wouldn't have worked.
I mean, as it is, the only reason I can finish this thing is because of Williams.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is actually, if you're going to make a comedy, this is a dangerous subject matter to tackle, because it's hard for people to relate to, and it's easy for you to gloss over. But the minute you start really talking about it and getting darker, I mean, a parent separated from his children, and yearning to see them again. Going to the extremes he does to see them again, and then the ending, we could have made a very unpleasant movie out of this.
Oh my god, I just came up with a way better way to make this movie, and it's super dark and awful, but I came up with a way better way to make it. Philip Seymour Hoffman, and the dad is a weird pedophile.
Now you see, that movie's going to have problems.
That movie would be so... And Todd Solondz is the director. Oh my god. That movie would be so kind of gross and unwatchable, but it would be so good.
Tom gets off on that.
Oh my god. I love Todd Solondz and I love Harmony Korine. Even though they are just disgusting filmmakers in what they do, I think that their attempts to do that and their abilities to do that are just something that I love. I actually like Happiness, even though that movie is the worst thing ever. I like it. I like how ballsy it is.
So I'm gonna say, did Mrs. Doubtfire need to exist?
No.
I think that's a very good question you need to ask when you're talking about a movie that's not exactly a knockout hit and not exactly the worst thing ever made. Did it leave an impact? Let me say...
Well, it definitely left an impact on the cultural lexicon.
This movie needed to exist in some form.
Have you seen Arrested Development?
I've watched bits and pieces.
Did you see the Tobias is Mrs. Doubtfire storyline?
No.
That was infinitely funnier than actually this movie. It's a giant parody of this, and they acknowledge that it's a giant parody of this, and that's what makes it funny.
I think this topic, the whole topic about what happens to the person who loses out the divorce filing, is something that should be talked about. And it's brought up here in a very non-threatening manner comparative to what it could be brought up as.
It's something that's never been done well in Hollywood, to be honest.
I will agree with that.
If you think about Kramer versus Kramer, probably gets the closest, and even then, that movie doesn't work because everyone in that movie is kind of just a despicable human being that's just using the kid, and it's really horrible in that sense. And that's the closest we've gotten.
So I'm going to say Mrs. Doubtfire should exist.
A better version of Mrs.
Exactly as it is.
Look,
but it does bring up a topic that we as a society should talk about.
In 10 years, somebody will make a real divorce movie.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest.
It's going to happen at some point.
Oh, a lot of the time, it takes someone to take that first step. And the fact that this first step brought in $400 million means that other studios will eventually be willing to tackle it.
I think you can't do it in a humorous tone. You have to do it really dark. You have to do it probably from the kid's perspective, probably, or the court's perspective.
You don't want it completely dark either, though, because then you scare away a large chunk of your audience. I mean,
I don't really.
You want a super dark movie.
Okay, wait. So you're trying to say you want it to be both commercially successful and good, or because I don't think there's a way to do that with a divorce topic. I don't think there is a way.
Let me be honest. I don't think this is an easy prospect. In fact, I think it's exceptionally difficult. I'm just not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it would take someone who's put a lot of thought into this and come up with something very clever. But it's possible.
I think it'd be another 20 years before you could do it. You'd have to have one that was good, was amazing, but was not commercially successful. You'd have to have something that was kind of like a bomb, but was beloved by those who actually saw it.
So a cult classic.
Kind of. Not a cult classic per se, because not sort of a cult classic. Like a cult classic without the campy tone. Because most cult classics, something that critically successful, but nobody went and saw it.
I'm basically mean by definition alone.
Yeah, okay. Definition alone, yeah. Kind of like that. It'd have to be something, and it probably what'll happen is it'll be from the lawyer's perspective, the life of a divorce court lawyer.
Actually, that could be really interesting, but hard to do right. Because
it's very hard.
Generally doesn't like entertainment that reminds it too much about the things about life that suck.
It'd probably be an indie movie, too.
It would probably be an indie movie.
It'd probably be an indie movie. And if you could get that across, that would be the first step, would be to actually take a real tone on this subject. And then the second step would be to make one that is the middle. Something that appeals to most people, but is still dark enough that you can actually explore the themes.
I'm going to say, this film, apart from bringing up the issue, this film succeeds in one important way, which is casting a character in this kind of predicament and making us identify with them. And again, that's mostly Williams doing.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're able to identify with this character at all, the fact that we feel for him and we kind of want him to get back with his kids, because we can see how kind of all the people involved are suffering, is a significant step. It's important. It has merit beyond simply being a cash-in. So I'm going to say I give this movie about 3.
I gave it 2. I give it a 2.
I don't want to rank it too highly because it's not the best out there. It does have some merits beyond being a cash grab, which elevates it above a very mediocre rating for me. But, I mean, honestly, this probably isn't going to be the movie you watch 30 times in your life. It's probably going to be the movie you watch once because you're curious. And you're like, yeah, it was all right.
Whereas I think it is not a good movie, and I would not recommend it. You'll probably end up seeing it at some point because it's kind of an American, a classic. Like anything that makes $400 million, so popularly ingrained in lexicon, you'll probably end up finding it at some point and watch it.
References being made and everything else.
But to be honest, Arrested Development, in the 15 seconds Arrested Development did this storyline, it was funnier than this. So, and that was just making the reference to this movie and kind of how really dumb this movie is. And so I gave it 2 out of 5. All right.
So I want to end off by saying that
I want to actually ask you a question first.
All right.
What is Nostalgia Critic going to do? Because he hates Robin Williams. What is he going to do for? Is he going to like?
he's going to do something.
Do you think he's going to actually do something?
He's going to do something.
If I was him, I'd just leave it.
Think about it. He's done a tribute to Siskel and Ebert.
He did well, yeah, but that's because he loves Roger Ebert.
Sure. He did a tribute to Juario. Even if he doesn't like Robin Williams passing is something that's going to have ramifications in the industry.
I don't think
and
that.
As someone who talks about film, and since Robin Williams was in so many nostalgic films, I think he's going to do something. I don't know what he's going to do.
I don't know what he can do because he spent so. It would just come across as disingenuous if he comes up and says, "You know, I kind of liked Robin Williams," because he spent like 3 months there where he just did nothing but complain about how much he hated Robin Williams. I don't know what he can do that isn't going to be weirdly insulting, that also isn't going to destroy his own canon, if that makes sense.
You've forgotten something very important, which is the nostalgia critic is an entertainer.
Yeah.
A lot of what he's saying about these people, he doesn't actually strictly mean. He's not actually trying to hunt Robin Williams down. But saying that on the show, on the episode before his passing, was kind of funny to hear. I see him doing something because it's not a small name.
No, if I was him, I'd just leave it. To be honest, I think
he could leave it, but at the same time, I think he can find one movie with Robin Williams that he enjoyed.
To be honest, I don't think Nostalgia Critic's done the issue I have with Nostalgia Critic. I think he's gotten really lazy. He's kind of gotten to the point where he doesn't feel as angry anymore because he's done all of the really really shitty movies. If you think about it.
It's not that. It's as someone who's watched every one of his videos.
I don't think he hates the movies anymore that he's seeing.
No, he's trying to move away from that.
Yeah, he's trying to move into more of a critical eye and more of a editorial.
He's keeping
column.
some of the profanity and some of the satire, but he's toning it down. Because he's understanding the range of his audience in terms of viewers, and also because I think he said this in one of his reviews. It's the same reason the angry video game nerd is a little less angry these days. Is because there's only so far you can go with that shtick before it burns out. There's only so many ways you can angrily declare fuck 38 times in a row before it becomes not funny. And eventually you have to branch out from there. So where do you go next? And I think they both kind of chosen a more moderate tone. Because they're going to want to develop ties in the industry. They want reviewers, they want movie producers to let them review their films.
Yeah.
And if I knew that I could hand over my film to someone who would just swear at it for 10 minutes, would I be inclined to do so? It's free advertising, yes, but
I don't know how many times.
It's much more marketable.
True.
And there's a lot more I think that he can say and do with that character.
How many times did you watch one of his episodes though, and then immediately go find the film? I can count several occasions in which I did do so.
I don't think I've ever done that.
Titanic, the animated movie. After I saw that, I immediately went and found that.
I'm not gonna lie. I love his rants, but I feel like his rants have been getting more creative to come up with the fact that he's swearing less in them.
And I think he doesn't hate. I think the other thing too is he doesn't hate the movies as much anymore.
I don't think he ever did.
I think he did.
Okay, I'll make a few exceptions. There are some the other animated Titanic movie, which are ass balls and deserve to be just
Moulin Rouge might be his greatest review of all time, and he hated that thing.
But he didn't swear for the whole thing either.
He didn't. No, he just physically, viscerally hated that movie.
Yeah.
I don't think he hated. For example, I don't think he hated Blues Brothers 2000 or Blood Rain as much. Or even really at all. He was just looking for things that he thought were stupid in the films.
I get the vibe that he disliked it quite intensely because, he's probably doing a throwback. He did the Three Stooges thing because he did the Three Stooges thing before for his last Uwe Boll movie.
And part of it is too and this is something that I in a lot of ways I feel bad for him because his whole career is based around this is the worst movie ever. I have to go prepared knowing this thing is awful. Whereas, if you look at somebody who did something similar, and his name is Nathan Rabin, he's one of my favorite writers of all time in terms of film. He coined the term manic pixie dream girl. He wrote this column called My Year of Flops, and it was basically where he went and looked at films that were commercially or critically unsuccessful, and he watched them.
Yeah.
And he said in the very beginning of his column, this is not going to be me making fun of bad movies. This is going to be me looking for the cult classic that hasn't been labeled a cult classic yet. And his column worked simply because when he liked something, he was willing to champion it, no matter whether no one else liked it or not.
Which is one of the reasons why I respect people like Nostalgia Critic and
Nostalgia Critic,
Doug Walker.
He has to hate what he sees. He can't come in and say, I don't know what, Mac and Me, I might have liked it, but I can't.
No, he could pull that off. He's had a few which he was not too down on.
I mean,
but
technically he wasn't too down on Rocky. Technically he liked Rocky 4, but you didn't get that until the last 30 seconds of his review.
What I want to say is that, though, he has to change things up, and he has to change things up consistently.
You know what I think he has to do?
He's not just trying to make regular entertainment. He's trying to make regular entertainment that people keep coming back for, so it has to be interesting. And he has kind of a long-standing habit of mainly bashing on bad movies, which also is creatively draining, because you're always going over the same
joke, yeah.
It's good to have things in between where you break it up with things that I think are awesome, because that helps you get your vibe and your artistic strength back. It is.
I think you should do.
You have to kind of balance that carefully.
I think you should take a look at things that are just kind of that were never really successful, but have huge cult followings.
Yeah,
right? And not because they're really bad, but because some people think are a masterpiece. Something like Southland Tales, which is a movie that I love, but a lot of people really didn't get. It's a movie that I've had people come out and say it's the greatest thing ever made, and it's also had Empire ranked it as the worst movie of the 2000s.
Yeah.
That would be something he should do, because it's such a bizarre movie. There's so much material and creativity with that.
He kind of does, but he tends to with other characters.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is, the angry video game nerd couldn't just turn around and morph into the happy video game nerd at this point. People have been around. They know why they like the character. He knows why they like the character. It's because you see him rant at things that suck, and he rants in really funny ways.
Yeah.
You can't, if you try and completely warp your character like that, you destroy your following. So Doug Walker would never have the Nostalgia Critic become happy, consistently. Maybe an episode or two, but he knows that that's not why people watch the Nostalgia Critic. He might create new side series, but...
Yeah. You think about this too. Nathan Rabin, the way his column worked was he set it up where he would name the movies Fiasco, a Failure, a Secret Success. You think about it, a fiasco wasn't bad, it was just crazy. A failure was bad and was bad and it was bad. And it was bad because it wasn't creative, and a secret success was a good movie. And there were so many times, Nathan Rabin's column introduced me to Heaven's Gate, which is one of my top 25 favorite movies of all time. It got me to go out and see things I wouldn't have normally seen, because a glowing review sometimes gets people interested.
I found that I tend to ignore really negative and really glowing reviews these days and go for the median reviews. But right. But they tend to bring up more of the glowing reviews tend to gloss over issues. The very negative review tends to exaggerate them. In the middle, you find a good balance between what was likable, the 50 to 70% margin. You get a good balance between what was likable and what really turned them off.
True, but that's my review of Life Itself, the Roger Ebert documentary.
Yeah.
Is that I thought it was kind of mediocre. I thought if I had to rate it, I would give it maybe 3 out of 5, right? Because I thought that it's a movie that, it's got Roger Ebert and it's kind of cute story of his life, but it's got a shit ton of flaws. And I would, if I wrote a review of Life Itself, and then I went back and read it, an alternate dimension version of myself went back and read it, I don't think that alternate dimension version would go see the movie.
All right.